Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you're having a great day. And hey, you're ready for some Computer America. And by the way, I have to say that, I'll mention that later. The mystery, who knows what I'm going to say. But everyone, welcome into the program. Today on the show is our all Linux program dedicated to the operating system and, of course, all the different distributions, news, rumors, that kind of thing, and hardware. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, to help us do that will be Marcel Gagnier, who will be joining us here in just a moment. But everyone, before we do, first things first, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including the show notes after the program. We'll have them up on the website, and we'll have a link to, of course, everything that Marcel does. And on top of that, anything that we talk about here, including links, articles, just anything and everything will be right there in the show notes. So everyone, once again, computeramerica.com. Find us on social media at Computer America, and so on and so forth. Let's just, why don't we go ahead and introduce our guest and get today's show started. So I think joining us from the lovely sounds of the Pacific Northwest, that looks like, and of course, if you are wondering what I'm talking about, check out the video portion of the show, and you will be able to see myself as well as the venerable Mr. Marcel Gagnier. So he is, of course, longtime contributor to Computer America, and he writes for many Linux publications, and he lives, breathes, and just really truly believes in open source. So everyone, welcome onto the show once again, Marcel Gagnier. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Not half bad, and just turn you up a little bit there. And yeah, I'm doing really well. Obviously, the holidays, man, it's getting hectic. I hope it's not too crazy for you.
No, well, it's not that crazy at the moment. In fact, it's more me trying to make sure that everything is in place before the kids are out of school, which is like tomorrow at 3 p.m.
So you're going to have your hands full.
It's all kids all the time for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I was about to say that's. I'm glad that we could catch you before the calm before the storm, because that's. I think that a lot of people are obviously going to be dealing with that, and of course, it's as good an opportunity as any to mention Computer America. We won't be back until like January. Oh wow, like January. I want to say after CES. So January 13th should be our first show back, and then we'll be back on with the normal.
You're like the Arrowverse shows on television. Like you're taking like this massive break in the middle of like the Crisis on Infinite Earths. You're taking this massive break, and you're just going to let everybody just sit until mid-January.
Well, I like we were planning on doing a show like Thursday and Friday, so January 2nd and 3rd, and we still might. I mean, hey, everyone stay tuned, but we will definitely be back to our regular schedule 13th. We'll actually be out at CES, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. out at CES, meeting with people and, recording short form content, short little interviews, see what everyone has and doing and that kind of stuff out there. But we won't be broadcasting from the show floor like we have in past years because that's really difficult. I don't know if you've ever tried to take your show on the road, Marcel. I know that you do your podcast and things like that. We have other guests that come on the show that try to do it like in their car while they're traveling. It's hard to do stuff on the road.
I've been there. I haven't been the one who's had to set the stuff up, but I've been on the other end where somebody arranges to be where I'm going to be, that sort of thing.
Right.
So it's definitely hard work.
But
I was just razzing you. I mean, it's like we're watching these shows. Nothing comes back until mid-January. So
true. Yeah. No. That's and I appreciate what they do, but I am with you all the same. I'm like, why? How dare you take a break? That is not what I pay cable for, and none of that money goes to them. But
in the Netflix world, I heard some people complaining about apparently Apple's new streaming service had decided to. They were going to do things like old TV style, which is like we release an episode.
I think you're talking about The Mandalorian.
Whatever the hell it was. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been watching it.
You got to watch The Mandalorian. That is.
Not watching it. No, sorry. No, I haven't. Anyway, so apparently they've been doing that, and people have been freaking out. Like, hey, we're in the age of Netflix. You release the whole season immediately, and let us binge watch the thing. So.
And so much of Netflix's success was on the ability to binge watch, and really, I think it was like old content, not new content. Where Breaking Bad is, the go-to example that people could binge watch the previous 4 seasons, and then they're like, man, we really want more. I kind of get it with like a new one, but I think it's like and I'm assuming with kids, you've subscribed to Disney Plus or you've checked it out at least, right? There's a 1-week free trial.
Believe it or not, I have not.
I'm shocked, but hey,
I know. Well, actually, my kids are big YouTube people. As they're watching various YouTubers that they have. Between Netflix and YouTube, we've pretty much got it covered over here.
I have to say, and this is just my review, the official Computer America review of Disney Plus. I was busy last week. I caught up on The Mandalorian, and I think if I had one more week of my free trial, I would not subscribe to Disney Plus. I think one solid week of just kind of some downtime, you would see everything that you want to see on Disney. Like unless you have a 5-year-old who wants to watch, I don't know, Toy Story or Moana, 100 times over and over and over again, you could probably watch all the content you want to see in about a week with Disney Plus. So that's kind of like why The Mandalorian is coming out, 1 episode a week. I feel like it's their way of kind of stretching what limited content they actually have, which is crazy because, it's Disney. Disney owns everything in the entertainment world.
Well, they kind of do, which is, I mean, they're evil. They're very good at it. It's sort of like Amazon. There are a lot of companies that are evil. They're evil, but they're really, really good at it.
Did you hear what? And this of course is very, very loosely related to kind of open source and that kind of thing. But Apple, of course, they're well known for their closed ecosystem, their walled gardens. Tim Cook, I think in an interview about 2 weeks ago, and we reported on it. Tim Cook said that monopolies are okay. It's just that when people abuse their monopolies, that's when there's a problem. And
that's the definition of a monopoly, an excuse to abuse your power.
Well, yeah, and that's really what it is. Like, I guess Tim Cook was saying that it's okay to own like 80% of the market. It's just that when you start to nudge other people or keep people out of the market, that's when there's a problem. Which we thought was, just very ridiculous. That's not how monopolies work at all. I mean, as soon as you own 80%, you by definition start, nudging people and keeping people out of your market.
Yeah. I mean, you crush all comers. You crush all competitors at that point.
Exactly. So Disney's much the same way. They own so much of it. I think that they pulled in like more than 50% of all the box office revenue last year when it came to movies. So
with Marvel and their they do this. It feels like they own
Marvel, Star Wars, of course, all Frozen 2 just broke like $18 trillion, I think, at the box office. That was congratulations to them. They've done very well. Yeah, they've done very well. So, but hey, that's neither.
I'm not worried about their future. I think they'll be just fine, regardless of how well Disney Plus does.
I think they're about I don't know, probably like 2 more like really successful franchises, and then I think they're going to be okay with unfreezing Mr. Disney, and they're just going to finally reanimate him the way that they wanted to. So with that being said, Marcel, we have gone completely off track for the first 5 minutes.
Like this never happens.
Absolutely. Let's get on track a little bit here, and why don't we introduce you? For those of us who haven't heard of you, haven't heard our segments here on Computer America, give us a bit of your background and what you tried to do here on the show.
Well, my background is actually a green screen, so that's...
Oh my God! I thought you were outside. I thought you were getting some fresh air.
Outside in the wilderness in some beautiful Scandinavian, outback or something. No.
Absolutely.
I do love the green screen. I've been playing with it for a little bit now. Yeah, that's right. I'm supposed to introduce myself. I'm Marcel Gagne. I've been writing about Linux and open source software for, oh, good Lord, more than 20 years. I've been using Linux and open source software for more than 25 years. It's my desktop environment. I'm a true believer in open source software, not just open source software, but open culture, open technology, open access to information. To me, it's all like one big, giant, wonderful ecosystem. And like I said, I've been writing about it, doing videos about it. I've done radio and television about it. It consumes me. It's a passion of mine, and of course, because I've written books and articles in so many different magazines. It's like it's this thing. It's part of who I am these days. So there you go.
Absolutely. No, hey, thank you for the introduction, and of course, we definitely appreciate your your expertise coming on the show. And by the way, I just have to say that one of our more popular segments in the past couple of weeks, because obviously we unfortunately didn't get to coordinate last month, with the holidays and stuff like that. And of course, my own just very, very bad at reminding you. But I will say that. The last couple of weeks, our most popular topic, because every time I mention it, it's a great way to just get people to watch the show, is just mention anything about the Linux smartphone that you turned me on to. I'm trying to think of the exact, and I'm sorry if you remember it, it's like the new Linux smartphone that is coming out and shipping.
The Librem 5.
That one, yes. So anytime I mention that in the title, just like 10 times more people are like, any kind of news with this smartphone, people are just eating it up. They're trying to get anything and everything they can with it.
Well, there is a huge amount of concern over things like privacy, for instance, these days, which is weird because we've got this love-hate relationship with our privacy. We on one hand, it's like we care deeply about it, and on the other hand, we like getting all these free services, which we get as a result of being able to be on Facebook free and upload things to Google free and all that sort of stuff. Free, but you pay for it with your privacy and your personal information and so on. So we're torn, we're pulled back and forth on these things, and I think that people are looking for a way to. How can I continue to exist in this connected world by not absolutely giving up everything? And I think that's where this privacy respecting phone technology is interesting to people.
Yeah, we had the CEO of Pure OS on the show because you mentioned them, and you kind of pointed and you said we're gonna have them on, and we actually did it for once. We actually had a guest on that you recommended. It was a very interesting interview, and the comments that we received. I mean, there were people who were like, everything the CEO just said was fake. He's a liar, and it's not going to happen. And of course, you would go into the comments like, could you please send me a source? And then other people are very quick to jump in and defend them. And they're like, don't listen to them. There's no source. They're just kind of naysayers.
Oh man, I got to go back and take a look at this. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah. That was our first Pure OS video about a month ago. It was very interesting just to see how many people were very for this. And having the CEO on the show, it was almost like talking to you, except you're not building a smartphone right now.
I'm not actually. I'm just I'm just hanging out.
Yeah, exactly. And like, the way that they went about open source, like they had to build everything from the ground up, like, and it's very interesting that so many like Android phone systems, they just kind of almost like a distribution of a Linux of a Linux distribution, where they kind of pick existing software and applications regardless of the privacy or regardless of anything, and then Pure OS would come in and say, well, we can't really use Facebook Messenger as a messaging app because, well, that's a privacy concern, and they have to completely rebuild what a messaging app is. It so much work goes into just completely scrapping all the privacy concerns and just starting over from scratch.
Yeah, and I don't. I'm truly of two minds for this because I do understand how much of my privacy that I give up. Being in the business and working with the technology and working with a lot of these people, I get it. I truly do. But I've made this Faustian bargain as well. I've given in like to the Google ecosystem,
Me too.
and
Yeah.
and I I have. I mean, I totally get it, and I totally understand it, and I manage my privacy in terms of deciding when I share information and when I don't share information, rather than just saying I'm going to close all the doors. Because I, as much as I respect, all the work that's being done in terms of privacy, I'm not sure that trying to stop all these things or trying to rebuild everything in a world where we don't share stuff, except explicitly. Um, I don't know that that doesn't stay taking a step back, and I don't know that we're going to know for some time. So, I mean, I truly and deeply respect all the people that care about these things, and I'm not just talking about purism and their Librem phone. I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about organizations in governments that are trying to, fight for our privacy, like the European anti-spam laws, and what was the most recent one? I'm trying to remember the one
For
where forced us to get all these messages saying we've updated our privacy policy.
that
Was that
would be the European Union. Yeah, whatever the.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble coming up with the law, but all of these initiatives to protect our privacy, first of all, I think are probably. I mean, their hearts are in the right place. I believe in them. I think that we do need people out there fighting for this stuff, but I'm not sure that they're not fighting the wrong battle.
GDPR, but yeah,
That's it. Thank you.
General Data Protection Regulation. Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know, such new territory. And before it was like, I think like back in the early 2000s when this was first starting to happen, it was like, oh, they can collect all the data, but they can't do anything with it. Now with artificial intelligence, wow, they can use it, and they can use it very, very well. So this is new territory for us. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, and this is not. I mean, we're heading into 2020 at the moment, so which is a really cool sci-fi sounding date, isn't it? Like 2001 was cool, but it's like 2020. It's like, okay, now we've officially entered the 21st century because
Right.
no going back now. 2020, 2020. It just sounds so cool. Anyway, but I think that these sorts of things are going to continue to dominate, what we think of in terms of computers and the internet and how we all work with it over the next decade, frankly, and going forward. But again, I don't know that there's much of a solution at this point. It's going to be interesting.
Well, and with that being said, I think I need a drink. And that's my very loose way to transition into the beginning part of the show notes. Anyone out there who checks that out, Marcel Garnier always puts in a today's wine.
All right. Well, today's wine is, well, here. Let me hold it up to the camera here so that you can see.
There it is.
This is a Hardy's Stamp Riesling Gewürztraminer. Gewürztraminer. No one knows how to say that word.
There's a lot of letters that don't belong together.
It's a pale kind of straw colored wine. It's an off dry. It's very, very tropical fruit, citrus type fruit in terms of the overtones or the undertones, rather, I should say, of the wine. It's very nice. It's inexpensive. It's from Australia. It's from South Australia, where despite the fact that it's Christmas time, we're in the holiday season here. It's a toasty in Australia these days. But anyway, so that's what I'm drinking at the moment, and it's a nice wine. I recommend it. It's inexpensive. Check it out.
There you go. Absolutely. And of course, and as you know, as you're always quick to point out here, for us in the States, it's even cheaper. There you go.
Yes,
So
it is.
absolutely. So there you go. And yeah, so we have our wine. We did our our pleasantries. We talked about the monopolies of Disney, and as we are wont to do. Why don't we go ahead, get started with today's show? And you have news, rumors, conspiracy theories, so many different things we could talk about.
Yeah. Just one other thing. The whole green screen effect. I just want to point out. I broke down and I spent money on a Logitech C922X camera.
Say that again slowly.
Logitech
Yeah.
C922X. It's a 1080p HD camera with stereo microphones, and I'm doing that both for the audio and the video. And
It's well.
I'm playing with green effect on so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely going well. And ever since that, I kind of kept up. Like, I'm actually using an old Logitech camera myself. Yeah, that's probably about the best you get before you get into like the enterprise, Brio.
Yeah, I'm fairly impressed with it. Anyway,
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk it out
Sure.
there because we routinely get into these discussions of cameras and text. Okay, so first of all, episode 8 of my new podcast, Tic-Tech-Toe. That's TICTEKTOE. And by the way, you can go to tic-tech-toe.com. You can find it wherever fine podcasts are to be located. And that just dropped. So my podcast series with Evan Leibovich is going strong. And we just did episode 8. We're going to do episode 9 hopefully tomorrow, just so we can have it wrapped up before Christmas. And I thought I would throw that out there because we do cover a lot of interesting not just open source stuff, Linux and open source stuff, but also a bunch of crazy pop culture things. And believe it or not, that leads us immediately into the big controversy that we've covered in the last 2 episodes, or at least partially in the last 2 episodes. And that's the .org controversy. Are you familiar with this?
So .org.com, that kind of thing. I am familiar with buying them, and I know that I'm familiar with the concept. And I think a lot of people understand the idea of .com, .org, .co, that kind of thing. But .org itself, no, I didn't know there was any controversy with this.
Well, the controversy goes like this. .org historically has been set aside to identify organizations like NGOs or nonprofits or things like this. So that's why you would come up with .org. I mean, you were specifically saying this is not a for-profit company. This is an organization, and it sets historically anyway. I don't know if we can still say that today, but it sets a standard that says, okay, we are, we're unbiased in some ways. So like I said, there are all these expectations that are built around it. Anyway, because of all this, it was maintained by a different organization, the Internet Society, which has been sort of taking care of .org for a number of years. Now, the new head of the Internet Society is a for-profit guy. He's a corporate dude who wants to make some money. So he's decided he's going to sell off the .org domain. And this has set off all sorts of controversy because, of course, the company that came forward to buy .org is a company called Ethos Capital, which didn't exist until a few months ago. It was created by some Republican billionaire who basically wants to take over these organizations. And like tons and tons of organizations have come forward, including the Girl Scouts of America, who are worried about what it means for them and organizations like them. In other words, things like, okay, so now you get to raise the price on the domains, the price that we're paying for this domain. So you get to suddenly charge us, let's say that it's $10 and they raise it to 20. It's not like it's the end of the world for an annual fee, but it starts to feel like a cash grab. That's number one. Number two is the idea that a for-profit company with deep political roots could use its power over the domain to shut down access to certain organizations, to basically make them disappear from the internet. So there's a huge controversy, and this is like all over the world. This is not, I mentioned the Girl Scouts because, what do you have to do to get on the bad side of the Girl Scouts? Like,
Not buy their cookies. That's a good way. But yeah, no, I understand completely.
yeah. So like I said, this is hugely controversial, and ICANN, which is the organization that handles most of the other top level
Yeah.
domains and so forth, has now stepped in to review the sale because there is so much controversy. So it's going to be interesting to see whether this actually goes ahead or not. But this is a case where something which has been, well, not quite in the public domain, although we're edging into the public domain thing, is suddenly co-opted by a for-profit motive and then sold off to a private firm, who then decides how something that was arguably belonged to all of us at one point now belongs to a big,
Well,
corporate conglomerate. So
it's and we've seen this with ICANN. We saw this with a number of other organizations that help really specifically with the internet, that people really don't think about how the infrastructure got into place, or what organizations maintain the .coms or the IP addresses, or any of these nuances of the internet. They just kind of existed for us, be that through large companies, be that through special organizations like ICANN, specifically set up for this. We saw this with, I think there was an organization, it may have just been like Google or something like that was looking into really buying a lot of the servers, that the internet was hosted on, that we all, kind of route all of our traffic through to get messages from one place to another. And they were talking about, who owns the majority of these things, and what happens when Google decides that certain purveyors can't send their traffic through their servers. It's the internet had, kind of, I feel like it's this giant patchwork quilt that just kind of sprung up, and we all feel very warm and happy with it. But there has to come a time when we all look, step back and say, is this built for the benefit of all of us, or can this be manipulated by private companies?
Well, it can obviously be manipulated, and I think that for-profit, and I was about to say for-profit organizations or companies or whatever, but any group which wields some kind of power, whether it's governmental power or whether it's economic power, as in the case of a large company, we're looking at you, Google and Amazon. And anyway, I think that there is the potential for public harm as well as public good. And when, in the case of the internet is not something that we can just sort of stop living with today. I mean, you've probably read more than one thing where somebody says, well, I've decided to get rid of all my Google services or to quit Facebook or whatever. And then invariably, after a little while, they get back on Google, they get back on Facebook.
Yeah, about 2 to 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's really hard to live in this modern world without having access to this technology. So now we're basically dealing with something which is this is tough territory, but we should almost be looking at internet access as a human right. As in, every person on the planet should have easy access to this global telecommunications network, because frankly, you can't really live without it. It doesn't matter if you're a farmer in sub-Saharan Africa, you got to sell your goods, you got to connect to the internet, you got to get in touch with your buyers. I mean, it's one of those things that we all need to be able to operate and survive and things like this. And
Well, and just jump in here real quick. One of the most useful and powerful, influential organizations on Earth, the United Nations. Because what they say, everyone listens to and follows. They said that in 2016, there was a UN resolution saying that the right to internet access, the right to broadband, and not just internet access, but broadband internet and the freedom to connect, that all people, it's a human basic right to...
I agree completely. I think that it's the sort of thing which there should be frankly unfettered access to this. And, we talk about things like NATO, for instance, where everybody is supposed to throw in their fair share to support the organization and so on.
Mhm.
I throw that out because obviously it's one of those things that crops up in the news, especially
Of course.
if the Donald doesn't like NATO and, gets upset by the UN and all these other organizations. But the fact is, because the world as a whole isn't going to function particularly well if we shut down all these things, or if we start putting up barriers, which is happening, obviously. I think there needs to be a real concerted effort slash fight to keep this open and to make it a human right, a basic human right.
Yeah,
That's me.
no, you're definitely right. And I was just reading over some of the instances where, ever since, like, let's see, in 2000, 2010, 2009, 2019, like, you have places like Costa Rica, Estonia, Finland, of course, the largest abuser of human rights in the world, France, Greece, India, Spain. Like, this is happening pervasively all over. And just kind of looking through your show notes for the latest podcast that you have with Tic-Tac-Toe. You also mentioned, like the Philippines. I'm sure that there are places all over the world that are doing this, but it's like very subtle. Like, I'm reading some of the examples, and it's like, they're cutting off access to people who download illicit material. It's like they're stealing, but
But the
then they're
fun is, yeah, but
these people are stealing, but then they're immediately taking away their right to freedom of expression by cutting them off from the internet. It's it's a very inconvenient way to think about it, but the internet is so crucial that we have to start thinking about it that way.
yeah, and well, let's go to something even more basic. For instance, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you don't pay your hydro bill in the States, they can cut you off, right?
Yes. And sorry, I was thinking about electricity, and during the winter months where you could freeze to death, they are technically not allowed to cut off your electricity, but water, sure, you can live without water.
Yeah,
Apparently.
well,
Apparently.
exactly. Well, but regardless of how you look at those things, like here in Canada, for instance, they have to find other ways to get you to pay up because they can't cut off your water and they can't cut off your electricity
Mm.
because those are the necessities of life. Okay, and of course we do have winter here, but those are the sorts of things that you can't cut off from somebody. So if you're having legal issues with somebody else, somebody squatting or whatever, you have to go through different legal channels and so forth. But you cannot cut off something which people need to be able to live. It's just one of those things. And uh, and I think that there are things that you have to allow for people to have access to. And at some point, we're going to grow up into some big global community if we're lucky and we don't destroy ourselves before then. We're going to grow up into this big global community, and we're going to understand that there are things which need to be free to all, like right from the get go. And I think the ability to communicate easily is one of those things, as is the ability to have access to fresh water and to make sure that you don't freeze in the winter time and that you can, that you have power.
Yeah,
Those are the sorts of things you have to have.
and really, like, a lot of this is getting easier. I do not buy into the hype of 5G and all that kind of thing. Yeah, there we go. So I don't buy into the hype of 5G and all that kind of thing. But I think that with 5G, when it finally comes into play, what I think is going to be 3 to 4 to 5 years, you don't have to run fiber optic cable into people's houses. It's just going to be essentially floating in the air around them. Whether or not Elon Musk gets a Starlink internet access satellite system in place, there you go. But essentially, we're going to be surrounded by the internet. And at that point, it's not a question of access. It's about censorship, because you are constantly going to be able to access the internet, just by existing, just by standing there. Now it's a matter of, who's allowed to access it and why can't they access it.
Yeah, it's actually Starlink is one of those things that I'm following fairly closely. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that works out. And I've made the case more than once over time, which is we have like routers everywhere, and I do mean everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wonder if there was some big concerted effort, and I may have even mentioned this on the show, but I have mused about it in public before. If there was some huge concerted effort to create a secondary internet backbone so that basically there was some freely distributed Wi-Fi access basically around the world that allowed everybody to connect through some simple app or whatever, and basically share the internet so that you didn't have to worry about what your access point was. I think this would be an interesting exercise. It would be interesting to see where that goes.
You're talking like peer-to-peer networking.
Yes, I'm talking about a peer-to-peer internet, uh, and
Who's the gentleman?
By all the people who do it, because I mean, we've got connections absolutely everywhere. In some ways, it's not too difficult to imagine that for large communities or large groups, you could effectively run an internet without any provider backbone. It would be fascinating.
Yeah, and of course, Tim Berners-Lee. If you've ever heard of the gentleman, he developed the World Wide Web. For those of you who are out of the loop, he has been a public critic of the existing internet as we now know it, even though he was the one who helped really implement it. And he wants to implement the Solid, I believe, is his idea, which is a giant peer-to-peer network that would be, that would really replace the centralized, kind of servers that we have today, and it would just be everyone would be peer-to-peer connected, much like you said, and be able to share information, from one place to another without
I honestly
tracking.
don't understand why this isn't possible, and especially in the open source community, I'm surprised that there hasn't been what's the expression, from the ground up,
Yeah,
grassroots. Sorry,
yeah.
a grassroots open source effort to create this peer-to-peer internet. It like I said, I find it almost amazing that this hasn't happened yet.
But see, that involves a large amount of people getting together and cooperating, and that is
The open source community is amazing at that kind of situation.
Yeah, they really are. They're really supportive of these ideas. I think that unfortunately you need a larger group of people than simply the people who are very into open source. You need even more people than that to be.
You know what?
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, and this is one of those arguments that started a long time ago when frankly I first started doing Computer America, however long ago that was, and we used to talk about Linux as being this fringe operating system, this open source curiosity that was, getting in popularity. And it is now the most popular, pervasive operating system on the planet. It runs the entire freaking internet. And like, you cannot, even if you've got a Windows PC or an iPhone or something like this, you cannot use those devices without going through Linux servers and open source product and open source technologies. It's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. So the idea that you can't have a grassroots sort of open technology like that take hold and cover the planet in a short time seems,
it's to me it's almost making this relationship between like open source and those who follow its ideology and those who like can really sit down and explain to you, here's why I really appreciate open source and here's why I do this, and if you need to go get that, just let me know. But
that's okay. It's Amazon dropping off another package.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. But hey, I will say that like it's almost like with video games. Like there are people who truly believe that that video games are a part of their identity. What games they play, what camp that they associate with. That is they're, I hate to use the word, but they're gamers. They're they play a lot of video games. The people who play video games though are everyone plays video games. Everyone plays video games on the phone, on their computer, on a console. It's billions wide, but those who actually identify as a gamer of some sort are a much smaller group of people. And I think like you said, the amount of people who use Linux in the billions, the amount of people who actively seek it out and try to follow a set of ideals, or who try to really live the open source life, that's a much smaller group. And I'm not saying that the two can't come together and become one another, but it's just not where it is right now.
No, I agree, and I do see that as a potential future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So hey, so let's just recap real quickly about this whole open source. I'm sorry, not open source. The .org thing, and this So the .org sale that went through. This new head is now leading.
It has not gone through yet. It has been temporarily blocked. So it's being reviewed. As in, it was going to be a done deal, but there's been so much controversy and so much uproar that the deal, which was supposed to be, like I said, signed, sealed, delivered, is being challenged.
I have a question. If this deal doesn't go through, is there a risk of the organization breaking up, or is this simply venture capital flashing money saying, hey, we want to take this over, and they said, this is a good deal, we're just going to take, like, is this like an all or nothing proposition, or is, if this deal gets declined, does the organization that currently exists continue to exist?
The organization can and would continue to exist. I think this is, it's being, again, I'm not on the inside.
Right,
so, I
right.
speculate based on what, I read about. But it sounds like it's the for-profit motive. It's like, hey, we could make some great money for the organization by doing this. And it's one of those cases where the ideals of the organization aren't necessarily the ideals of the person who was brought in to run the organization. They have a different point of view. Like, for instance, sometimes you have to be able to say, you know what? We understand that there is a profit to be made in doing this, but our charter says that we will ignore the profit motive when it conflicts with the public good that we are supposed to be doing. And I think this is where the argument is landing. This is squarely where the argument is landing at the moment.
I gotcha. And really, these organizations, they're I think a lot of people would be surprised at how intimate, I guess, these organizations, because I don't want to call them small, much like Wikipedia, which I think only employs like 60 people. But of course, there are thousands and thousands of contributors who contribute to the whole thing. I was looking at the Electronic Frontiers Foundation. They probably have about 200 people on their website that they say actively, or about 100, I should say. And then, of course, ICANN, they have about 390 employees. These institutions are very small and I guess open to influence. So that's something to think about going forward.
I was going to reach for a prop. And
sure.
Unfortunately, out of my reach, I'd have to cross to the other side of the table to get it.
You need to work on your force powers. It's that time of year. You need to work on your force powers, which I think actually come out tomorrow. But hey, let's go ahead and continue on. Last one. I don't know if you want to touch on this or go ahead and move on to some other topics.
Move on. Let's move on because it's Christmas. We need to talk gaming, and you brought up gaming. You brought up gamers, so we have to talk about games.
I did indeed. So what next?
All right. Well, speaking of organizations that weren't supposed to be evil, but people are questioning it these days, Google.
Yeah, ever since they changed their slogan from "Don't be evil" to "Do no harm" or
do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Yeah, very mysterious.
What does that mean? The right thing for who?
Exactly.
Right. Anyway, so they have produced, or they have just come out with something called Stadia. You probably remember there was a lot of excitement around it as it was being displayed several months ago. It's like, hey, we've got this new thing where you will be able to play your video games. Like, we're talking cloud gaming here. You'll be able to play it on your television, on your smartphone, on any computer. You'll be able to pick it up, and just continue playing from where you left off. It's amazing.
Right. This new idea that failed in 2005, 2012, and 2015, and now it's coming back fresh, never seen before, Stadia. Right.
Exactly. Well, anyway, Stadia. So Stadia started showing off this stuff, and I know that other organizations have sort of gone down this road. PlayStation had their PlayStation Network, and so the idea of cloud gaming isn't exactly something 100% new, but this was billed originally kind of like a Netflix of gaming, where you paid a monthly fee and you had access to a big catalog of games without having to spend $129 on Red Dead Redemption Ultimate Edition or something like that. Yeah, so that was kind of the way the promise was built up. And they've sort of modified the deal a little tiny bit since then. But the idea is, so they started selling this thing, the Founders Edition Pack, which got you 3 months free on the network. You got this, beautiful little controller, the Stadia controller. That's what I was going to get up. I was going to get up, walk around, and go get the controller so I could, show it to you.
You actually got it. That you are the first one to come on the show that got it.
I got it. Here, you talk for a second. I'm going to go get it.
Sure. Absolutely. So again, everyone, for those of you who don't know what Stadia is, it's that idea that you just pay once, get to play all these games, and be able to stream them to your computer. And it really, like, one of the defining points of it as well is that they use some weird technical thing that only Google could do. And hey, for everyone watching the video portion, you can see the controller right there. Only Google, and well, I could say only Google, but Google, Amazon, and maybe Microsoft to some extent. Yeah, hey, looks very nicely on you. And I will say that these organizations own so much of the internet that Google promised really low latency because they own so much of the internet that they could route your game in the most efficient way to get your packets, for your game very, very quickly. It was an interesting concept that I think Google really tried to push that they could do.
It's interesting, and they okay. Obviously I'm showing off my nice little midnight blue controller. It's a beautiful controller, actually.
Yeah,
it's got some lift on it.
Very sleek.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said very sleek.
Yes, the launch was actually had some issues. They didn't have a whole heck of a lot of games at launch, and there were only 2 games in this, Netflix of games thing that you could get. Although there are 4 now, and the idea is that every month they're going to add some more, and you get this bigger and bigger catalog. Now, the problem with that particular thing, of course, is as long as you continue to pay for it, you continue to have access to those games. Now, if you bought the game outright, like let's say you did want to get Red Dead Redemption and you spent the $129, you get to keep it. Like you can access it anytime on the Stadia network but games that you're not buying, that you're not paying for, are games that you can only access for as long as you continue buying the network access.
Right.
Anyway, so the idea was like, can they possibly deliver this with the amount of speed? And of course they're talking about like 4K resolution for playing these games.
So they said.
Yeah, that's a lot to sell, to people. So I decided, hey, this sounds too cool. I couldn't pass it up. So I signed up for the Founders Edition, which gave me this controller. It came with a Chromecast Ultra for 4K access.
I just bought one of those. Interesting.
By the way. Yeah, you actually do need the 4K Chromecast to be able to do Stadia, to do this streaming Stadia games. Anyway, I have to say I'm fairly impressed. The release, like I said, had its issues because there was only so much there, and they had like some hiccups. Like for instance, even the people like me who bought the Founders Edition, you were supposed to get an invite code, which didn't come with controllers. So now you've got this, you've unboxed it, you're at home, you're just chomping at the bit to try this out, and they haven't sent you the code, so you can't even access the system. So there were some hiccups, but I think that Google is finally clearing some of those things out. And the bottom line is it actually works surprisingly well. And here's the thing that's really cool. I thought, now I linked to a YouTube video that I did on this. So if people want to see what I went through to make this happen, it's in the show. Sorry, it's in the show notes there.
Yep.
But
Yep.
The thing that's really cool is it literally does work on anything. Like, as it turns out, I am running a Linux notebook here. Okay. And the notebook is, now it's a fairly hefty notebook, but it doesn't actually have to be because I've done this on a Chromebook as well. All you need is to bring up the Chrome browser. You connect to Stadia. You're going to need if you're doing this with something like, your PC, you're going to need to use like a USB cable to hook up to it. Although they say that the Bluetooth stuff should work with the PC eventually, or at some point the Wi-Fi stuff, which it does work, by the way, with the Chromecast. That works just fine. But it just works. Like you can fire up games and play them on your Chrome browser, and the performance is surprisingly good.
And for those of you watching on the video portion, we pulled up the first video there, and I'm, and you're right, the performance is good. No offense. I was actually kind of curious about the latency and the input for shooting games, but you're getting better. I guess that's the best way to put that. How does the latency feel?
Playing the games or what?
You're playing Destiny 2, and
suck at it. I'm these are games that I've never played before. Like seriously.
Yeah. No. Well. Hey, you're in luck because they're actually a lot of fun. But I will say that the input for when you hit, let's say you shoot an enemy to the point where your character actually starts to shoot. Did that feel natural, or was there any kind of delay? Because that will turn people off.
It felt natural, frankly.
That's good.
It actually feels like if the latency, if it's there in terms of hitting the A button or the X button or whatever, or or clicking these guys, the time between doing this and it happening on screen is not noticeable. Like if there's a lag, I'm not seeing it. Okay.
Yeah, and really, I appreciate that you are playing both a first-person shooter, which is highly dependent on latency and just that ability to have the input and the direct kind of result of your input, and then the other one that you chose was, of course, a fighting game, which is equally as important when it comes to input latency lag. Can make that just break the entire game, and you decided to go ahead and play both of these. Very interesting.
I also did Tomb Raider. I've also played Tomb Raider on this, and I played Farming Simulator. I did all of them on Linux using the browser, and I've done all of them on the television. By the way, Farming Simulator, I do not get this. Like
it's
so weird to me. It's like you're driving a tractor across a field and planting crops. It's like it is the weirdest damn idea for a video game I can imagine.
Boy, I cannot wait until you get your hands on Truck Driving Simulator. Man, that is a blast. And really,
honestly, I loaded this thing up and it's like, why would someone make this into a video game?
And so like those simulation games are actually do very, very well. If you ever get the chance, check out Goat Simulator, where you get to simulate being a goat. And although I will warn you, it is very different than just being a goat, but it's
who knows what it's like to be a goat anyway.
Still, but really, this idea of Stadia, and this is where I'm kind of excited, is that I have this beefy computer back in the day. Like I paid like $1,200 just for the video card, and that has lasted me for a couple of years. But I don't want everyone to have to do what I did, and having the ability to kind of stream the games on any hardware, that is the future of video games.
It is pretty exciting, and like I said, I'm not going to say that it's perfect at the moment, and I think like PC games are damned expensive for one thing. It's one of those things that freaks me out on the store.
They're getting more expensive. They are.
People actually pay that much money, like for
I have met
spend over $100 on a game.
I have met people who have bought every Sims expansion, which will run you about $1,300. I have met people who have gotten every DLC for, I think it was Tractor Simulator or Train Simulator, which can run you about $13,000 if you want to get every piece of content for that. Games are getting
wrong business. I don't know, man.
Games are getting expensive, but I will say that it's expensive, but also you were talking about the business model of being able to stream any game within the library as long as you continue to pay for it. Would you like to see an option, and this is going to be for everyone, so I'm assuming everyone's going to say yes, if you already own the game in, let's say, your Steam library or through a Windows Store or something like that, would you like to see that you'd be able to stream any game that is compatible for free as long, through Stadia or, no, I guess then, because then you have to pay for the service. I wish there was a way that you could just stream your games for free that you already own.
But that's just it. The streaming the games thing is if you own the games, you can stream for free.
Okay? Really?
Yeah. So you don't have to pay the money. Like if you went out and you bought, I don't know, Destiny 2. Destiny 2 is one of those that, comes free if you pay the whatever it is, $15 a month or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, if you actually spent the money on it, however much it costs, I mean, you can look it up. I don't know at the moment, but
about $70, yeah.
Yeah, let's say that it's $70. Okay, so you spend the $70. If you're not paying the $15 a month, you own that game. You can continue playing it. Any of the games that you bought, you can continue to play. So they're not stopping you from doing that. It's just those games that would be otherwise, free as part of the subscription service. And I have to say that I've come around a lot on the whole idea of subscription services. I mean, it started obviously with Netflix for me. And the idea that I don't have to buy these stupid video cassettes, well, not video cassettes, and then CDs, and then DVDs, and then Blu-rays, and so forth, So I don't have to buy any of those things. Downstairs in the basement now, I have massive collections of Blu-rays and DVDs and CDs for music that I bought over the course of several years. And you know what? It's a pain in the butt to go looking for something, but I know that I can just fire up Netflix, or for that matter, call on our old friend, the Google Assistant up there, and say that I want to hear a particular piece of music. I can just ask for it, and it will play like right now without me having to go and hunt down this stuff.
Yeah.
And I've done the math. There was a point where we used to buy CDs. We'd buy like maybe a dozen CDs a year at $20 a piece, say.
Not bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like, okay, so let's say that that's $250 a year. Okay. I have a family membership for the YouTube Premium, which includes all the music and no commercials on YouTube, and that's $15 for everybody in the family. Okay, and if I do the math over that, that's a lot less than I used to spend on CDs in a year. I'm okay with that, and I think I would be okay with that in games as well. If I have to buy a couple of games a year, $150 for 2 games, suddenly $15 a month for more or less all the games I want seems pretty cheap.
It's cheap, and of course, like you said, the ease of access to be able to access it anywhere is again a convenience unto itself that you would pay for.
Yes.
I no, and I'm glad that you came around to the idea that that so many people have already come around to, especially with like Spotify. They've just having any music that you want at your fingertip. My parents still pay for $1.29. Like, I don't know when iTunes started charging $1.29 per song, but they still charge, or they still buy every individual songs for $1.29, about 2 a week, I would say. And I was like, just get Spotify. You get all that stuff for free, and you can listen. And like, nope, I want to own my music. At this point, it's a matter of preference if you want to choose that route.
Yep. No, I have the same argument with friends who continue to buy music. And it's like,
yeah. Well, and hey, they're supporting the industry that we are very weakly doing ourselves. Now, Marcel, I will say that we have about 4 or 5 minutes left. Why don't we go ahead and talk about something?
How did that happen? All right, let's cover a couple of topics really, really quick. One of them is the hot item for Christmas this year is the Oculus Quest, which now has finger tracking.
Really?
Yes, you can actually just, instead of using the controllers now, it's early. It's an experimental release, so developers can start playing with it. But man, this is like the future of this is another future of gaming that I can see. And the reason I mentioned that one is I've got a link to a couple of places. So if you're one of those people that got lucky enough to get an Oculus Quest at Christmas, because they're damn hard to get a hold of, they're sold out practically everywhere. I've got a couple of cool sites for you here. Completely open source stuff, free stuff, games that you can play without having to spend lots of money. One of them is xrca.de, which has some pretty damn cool games, including something that's very Beat Saber-ish, which is available, you can play it in the browser. So what you do is you bring up the browser inside the Oculus Quest, and you have access to these free games. And then another thing which is really cool is something by Mozilla called Hubs, Hubs, hubs.mozilla.com. Yes, those are the people who make the Firefox web browser. Hubs is interesting because you can create virtual worlds inside the browser that you can then share with friends and family. Like literally, you can interact in them, move objects around, play games, and you do it all through a browser, and it's free, and it's kind of amazing. So I do want to recommend that as my free and open source offering for people who are lucky enough to find themselves with a VR headset under the tree this Christmas. And finally, do I have time for a finally?
Yeah, go for it.
I switched distributions again. I did. I am now running some called Peppermint OS. You want to talk Christmas themed? I'm running an OS called Peppermint OS.
What does this one bill itself as?
It bills itself as a very slim, very fast desktop Linux that just kind of works, and it's actually really kind of cool. Now, I confess that I played with the default desktop that is used in it, and again, it's a very fast, very nice, very easy to work with desktop. People coming from the Windows world are not going to be freaked out by this one in the least. And it's based on the latest version of Ubuntu, so it's got It's very recent, like it's completely up to date, and it's got its own tweaks, but done by the Peppermint OS people. Now, I've gone back to running the KDE Plasma desktop on it because, of course, you can do that. But it worked really, really well out of the box, including configuring my NVIDIA drivers, all that sort of stuff. It's pretty slick, and like I said, it's got kind of a Christmassy theme to it. Peppermint OS. It's Marcel's latest distribution in his forever distro hoppingness.
And I don't know if you and I don't know when you because you spent some time kind of building up these show notes. They just had a respin. I guess it's like kind of like a refresh of their current Peppermint 10. So just yesterday.
No, I'm running Peppermint 10. That's actually what I'm running.
Yep. Well, they released that in looks like in like somewhere in May, and then they just released a kind of like an update.
Yes,
so
and I did the update as well.
Right. Perfect. So
now the videos that I've got, by the way, that show Stadia being run on Linux is actually being run on Peppermint. So there you go.
Oh, there you go. And yeah, definitely check out those YouTube videos. You look like you're having a lot of fun. I saw you on Twitch the other day, and very, very cool to see you on there. And hey, I'm glad that Tic-Tac-Toe is on its 8th episode. That's very impressive. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's going well, and it's gone all over the place, of course. Like I said, it started out with just Linux and open source, although it didn't stay there very long because you might have noticed that I'm easily distracted. I can go off topic quickly.
I think that is how most people operate because, hey, they like to enjoy that. And really, I've found, just doing Computer America for so long that people enjoy a natural flowing conversation than a strict by the points Q&A. So, and hey, why I love to have you on here because we do have a very nice flow. Everyone, if you want to catch up more on Marcel, of course, links in the show notes. And Marcel, until next time, we will see you post CES. So have a great one.
Cheers. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Happy Hanukkah. Feliz Navidad. Whatever it is you're into at Christmas time, or the holiday season. Cheers.
Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. And everyone have a great one. Thank you so much. Until next time. Bye, everyone.